Wicked, that stands for what you can do. My name is Jake, and this is Jake versus the internet. I just saw that I can adjust people's volume in StreamYard. My word. Oh, hi, by the way. My word, though. Oh, and I've got both banners up. Let's just do that. How's everybody doing? Good to see you, HBX. Good to see you. I believe it's pronounced, but tell me if I got that wrong. Is it Oruchan Yusel? Oruchan Yusel? I like that. It's a cool looking name. I want to know if it's a cool sounding name. That C looks like it's a ch, or a chan Yusel. I don't know how to pronounce it. Do tell me how far off I am. Cat67, Cat, great to see you. I have to say, I've been enjoying this format. I think we're going to keep it up for a while anyway. But I do see a flaw in my presentation. I surely do. And that is, I haven't really been going on the tangents I think this deserves. I haven't. You guys have asked some things over the last couple of streams, and we talked about them briefly. But then I just ended up joking about how much we disagree. But there was opportunity there. There really was. There was opportunity to have deeper conversations. So this time, when we do the thing, I'm going to try my best to respond to your text questions as well as your call-ins. But you can still call in. That's still very much in the mix. Oh, I didn't upload these media assets. Okay. That's okay. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 topics to possibly discuss. I think you'll enjoy them. Let's find out. We're going to find out what President Prison is in a moment. What is that? Every U.S. president, let's see. Okay. We have 4 topics to discuss. Let's get the first one up here. Pep Talks, good to see you. What's with this Gen Z vertical stream? Jake hitting midlife crisis mode. Look, I've been 40 since I was 12. I'm always going to be of that flavor. Ooh. But I noticed that folks on the right wing of things seem to have a preference for the vertical stream, and I'm trying to meet folks where they're at, is all. In the blue Danube is my ping. There we go. There's the bar I was looking for. All right. We're almost there, folks, I promise. I did forget to upload the media assets beforehand. And what is the point of talking about a thing if you don't have a cute title card? Oh, we'll take your suggestions. Probably could have said that to begin with. We'll take your suggestions as well. So if you have suggestions for things you'd like to hear me voice an opinion on, drop them in the comments. I'll try to get to it. If it's interesting, Christians are victims of right wing politicians. That's what I want to start off with. I often hear folks on, let's say, my side of the aisle talking about Christians as the villains of this whole story. And, having gone to Catholic school as a youth, having been an atheist pretty much my whole life, I I understand where they're coming from, but I don't think that it's okay for us uh, to let one of the scapegoats of this story end up forever in the history books as the villains, because I think they are victims of this crime. I do not think that most of the right wing politicians who are performatively Christian are in fact Christian at all. I don't think they believe in God. I certainly think they don't believe in the God of the religion that they claim to believe in. Um, I just think that they are being taken advantage of. Their good intentions are being taken advantage of. Let me tell you about some things I like about Christianity broadly, because my whole life, one of the groups of people that I've enjoyed mingling with are Christians. In fact, let's take this down for a bit, because we'll get back to it in a second. But let's talk about what I like about Christianity. Uh, they have a belief that leads them to the conclusion that we are born with the capacity for evil and the obligation to resist evil urges. Now, Christians tend to phrase this in terms of original sin and in terms of the devil tempting you. When they phrase it like that, that's an analogy they use. And some of them believe it quite literally. But functionally, what they arrive at is the idea that all of us have an inherent evil potential within us. And that even though that is true, we have an obligation to resist that evil urge. I like that. And I think that is true. I don't think any atheist would actually disagree with that belief stated in that manner. That we do, all humans do have the capacity for evil. And all right, maybe not all atheists would agree with every inch of this statement, but the first part, yes, that we all have the capacity to be evil. And a humanist, so a secular humanist, would believe that we also have the obligation to resist evil urges. That is a very, I don't, I won't say that's a solely Christian belief, but that is a Christian worldview as well. And it's not a worldview even invented by the Christians, but it is one that they're very comfortable understanding and happy to operate within. It's what they are in fact operating under. That we are born with an inherent capacity for evil, and yet we have the moral obligation to resist it. We also have the moral obligation to understand it, I think. Where we disagree is what is evil. And Christians disagree amongst themselves about what is evil. But that broad statement is something I very much appreciate about Christians. They also understand that injustice excused on earth does not mean it should be condoned. So, in the Christian history, in fact, in the very beginning of the religion, they didn't get justice. Their guy, who was preaching peace and love, was killed by the state for preaching peace and love. And that's how the earth handled him. And yet, in the story of their religion, that is not the end. In the story of their religion, there is an afterlife, and there is judgment in the afterlife. Now, I am not a believer that there is an afterlife, but I do believe that there is judgment after life. I do think with the wonderful invention of writing from that moment on, there became the possibility that somebody could look back upon history and judge you specifically. Their regards for you, future generations' thoughts about you, are your afterlife, in my worldview. But crucially, what you get with the Christian worldview, where there is a being out there, not unlike a long-term Santa who's putting you on a naughty or nice list. I'm not trying to make fun of Christians. I'm just trying to simplify here to make a point. That idea makes it easier for somebody to also understand the concept that a law we have might not be a just law. Somebody who is part of a religion, whose founding member was executed by the state, will inherently have, as part of their identity, a story that acknowledges that the state is not always correct. And more broadly speaking, that what we do on earth, getting away with it is not on earth is not necessarily evidence that it is a good thing you've done. Evidence of a life well lived, I suppose. I need people to be able to understand this if we are going to proceed in politics as I intend to, as I hope we do, as I'm trying to make us proceed. Because there's a lot of people who have done a lot of wrong and they got away with it. And there's a lot of people who are doing a lot of wrong right now and they're getting away with it. We're going to have to acknowledge that this has happened and that we have done things poorly in the past and that we, as flawed humans, have been imperfect. Christians will have an easier time understanding these concepts because they are part of a religion which is founded upon them. That is something I like about Christians. So we got two things. Two things that I like about them. Here's the third thing. I'm kind of a spiritual dude. I do not believe in anything supernatural, but I feel that pull, you know? I sit on a hillside and wonder what it's all about. I sometimes stare at the clouds and think about what a bird's opinions must be on this and that. I have an interest in what the purpose of humanity is, and if there is none, what ought it to be? I like thinking about these things, and I love arguing about these things. And the culture of people who are most like that and most willing to engage with these things, I find, are the extremely religious. So Christians in America, a lot of times that's a Christian. Christians have been the source of some of my fondest conversations. I went to a community college. And back in that, community college, there was a dude who was so religious that he felt it was sinful to dress up on Halloween as anything but a religious figure. And I will never forget, coming out of the elevator when I happened to be dressed as literally the devil, because it was just a standard Halloween costume I could find. I came out of the elevator, and he was, dressed as the Pope or a bishop, I think. And he held up his cross. I flew back into the elevator, doors closed, and he just let it go down. You can get along with Christians. You really can. So, why do I say that Christians are victims of right-wing politicians? Well, not unlike how left-wing politicians will take advantage, and I don't mean far left, but I mean, the Nancy Pelosi's of this world, the theoretically leftist, but actually quite centrist politicians. We'll talk about that in a moment. Those types, but on the right, they take advantage of good intentions. A Nancy Pelosi will take advantage of our the fact that we are desperate to have somebody in office who's not appointing like out bigots. So we'll let her continue to take bribes from huge corporations as long as she puts, you people in power that put fair judges in power. In that way, Christians get taken advantage of. Except it's right-wing politicians who will pretend to give a about their causes. And I say pretend because they will do so in a way that harms Christian causes. For example, they will go out of their way to demand that the 10 commandments be placed in a courtroom. And there will be a big fight about that. And it's very, very performative. It's performative because if the 10 commandments were placed in a courtroom, what you would actually be having happen is the intertwining of religion with a lesser thing. The intertwining of religion with political, shady, dirty, gross political life. As a Christian, even if it's only Christians going into office, this is going to be hugely destructive for your religion. For an example, look at church attendance over the last 40 years and the rise of religious rhetoric on the right over the last 40 years. They go down together. There's people who take advantage of good intentions in order to steal power. And it's often hard to tell who they are because there are sincere Christians who are in public office who use their faith to guide them in difficult decisions. They do exist. But most of the people you wind up hearing about because they say wackadoo things, most of those people are just pretending to be the first people. And really, what they are is people which literally don't know which way to hold the Bible. They don't know who James is. They don't know who Paul is. They don't have a favorite book of the Bible. They, in fact, have no interest in the actual truths of the universe, of existence, that religion may offer. They only have interest in what you are willing to do without tangible proof. In the religious, where I see people who are willing to examine the mysteries of the universe, right wing politicians see people who are willing to do lots of things without direct evidence, without proof, and bad people will take advantage of that. They've settled on the right. Does anybody disagree? If so, do call in. Let's see what the wicked community has to say. Annie Fitzgerald ran for office in Washington now, working with political bigwigs around there to set the state on the right path. Good for you, my friend, and it's a delight to see you. Copper 519, what is this about? I'm asking people who disagree with me to call in and tell me why. Or just tell me why in the comments. Oh, got one from WSG Man here. He says, Christ is king. Oh, it does show up. Okay. Yeah, he says Christ is king I don't know if that's the Bible, but I imagine it is. Anyway, welcome. Cat67 Cat says most Christians live their lives based on the Old Testament, like an eye for an eye. I think that is our impression and not reality. Because I feel that most people wear linens with wool and don't even think about it. Most people don't have a deep understanding of what the various books are about, but generally get, okay, if I'm Christian, I'm supposed to be kind to poor people and what have you. I think most Christians, like most people, are just lazy. I'm lazy. If I was even if I was a true believer, I would still probably not go to church every Sunday because I'm just lazy. I I certainly wouldn't go to Sunday school. I might watch a couple of YouTube videos to freshen up every once in a while, but that's what I think. Nina Canadian, good to see you. 1 Corinthians. Yeah. Oh, we live in weird times, dude. Running for office again this year, says Annie Fitzgerald. And see, here we go. They pick and choose what they believe from the Old Testament. At least evangelicals do. And that's the fundamental problem. Because if you're an evangelical and you get into office and you establish because you believe we ought to be a theocracy, you establish it's okay to blur the line between church and government. What happens when you're equally in agreement seeing replacement 4 years down the line is instead a Mormon. And they say, "Oh, by the way, no more we can do caffeine now. You guys are lucky, but no more Coca-Cola specifically. That's out." Cuz Joseph Smith said, "No, wait, is it Coca-Cola? Is it tea? No tea. Whatever it is Joseph Smith said we can't drink. Coffee. I think it was coffee. Whatever, it's out skis." The problem is there's different sects, and I also don't even necessarily think this is what Annie said about evangelicals is wholly true. And I think if she were up here now, she would probably also walk it back somewhat because we only end up dealing with the people who represent Christians that were riled up by con artists. But that's not the average Christian. That's just the average Christian we wind up in arguments with because they come in here saying we're evil and this and that. But here's the thing, why? Why do they get all psyched up like that? It's because somebody was telling them to. Somebody was messing with their religion, and we should be angry on their behalf. Before we ask them to be angry on our behalf, and we should ask them to be angry on the behalf of all the people Jesus would have protected, but their politicians attacked. We should ask them to be angry about that. But first, we should be willing to be angry on their behalf. We should be willing to be angry that people are manipulating their religion, twisting the words, of their savior, if we have their best intentions in mind, and I do, as far as I've seen, you do too, we should get angry on their behalf. And we should let them know we are outraged for them. For them. They are victims here. Now, we of the progressive left would say there's a hell of a lot of other victims. There's victims of theirs. Sure. It does not change the fundamental fact. Christians are victims here. Con artists have been stealing time out of their lives, if nothing else. Pretending to be them. Making a mockery of their religion. Leading you and I, often, to having the wrong idea of who Christians are. Because fakers are up there making a mockery of them. Aping their religion, not practicing it. And poisoning the country against them. That's something we should feel outrage for on their behalf, on the behalf of Christians. And it doesn't matter if we have also been victims of. It's irrelevant because we're talking about one thing at a time. And in this case, my belief, Christians are indeed victims of right-wing politicians. We're going to do another topic very shortly. I want to read a little bit from Annie Fitzgerald here. From Annie Fitzgerald here, he said with full control of his mouth. I grew up in an evangelical church, and I was definitely indoctrinated. I was a victim in that sense, but I left the church in my early 20s. Marty Knudsen says, MAGA Christians is an oxymoron. You know what? I'm going to let you all in on a secret. And I expect there's going to be a hell of a lot of disagreement coming up. I'm looking forward to it because even if you're yelling at me, I like seeing you. But I think we have more in common as progressives. We have more in common with MAGA than MAGA or we have in common with centrists. This is Jake versus the Internet. We'll see in a short amount of time. Topic of the day, of the moment, coming right up. Progressives and MAGA have more in common with each other than with centrists. This is Jake versus the Internet. If you disagree with this statement, do consider calling in to tell me why. If you disagree with the statement, progressives and MAGA have more in common with each other than with centrists, do consider calling in and using mouth words to tell me from your face why that is. Or you can use finger words in the comments and I'll attempt to address them. Daniel says, everyone is a victim of current right wing nonsense. Facts. Has nothing to do with religion, has to do with these jackasses misusing religion. Absolutely agreed. Absolutely agreed. Yeah, there we go. Light. It was slowly falling over. Here's why I think progressives and MAGA have more in common with each other than with centrists. I do not see centrists questioning the world at all. I don't see centrists questioning the way things work, how they should change. I don't see centrists questioning the status quo. Famously, Ashley Babbitt voted for Obama and then voted for Trump and died for Trump. Now, not who was the most progressive president we ever had, who was perceived as the most progressive president we ever had at the time. Obama. He was perceived to be that. It's not how he behaved, but it is what people thought of him broadly. He promised change. He promised a fundamental change to the way the United States worked. And he joked about how wonderful it was that he could promise this vague thing because he didn't have to deliver on anything. That was Obama. Trump promised vague change. He was going to drain the swamp, right? Y'all remember? Sorry, I hate when people say right. But Trump promised, oh, he's going to drain the swamp. What does that mean specifically? Because I don't think anybody would argue that the swamp is drained. Centrists are not interested in change. Centrists are fundamentally conservative. I'm not saying that as the way an American might think the word conservative is meant to be taken. I mean, they are literally just the traditional way conservative is meant to be. They are resistant to change. A centrist is. Now, I think personally that MAGA is wrong about most everything. I think it's a matter of how informed the individual voter is and what the corruption of the politician is. I think there are very few non-corrupt politicians that exist at all in America, so don't take that too harsh. But I do fundamentally disagree with most things that MAGA wants to do about the problems. But I agree with MAGA about what the problems are more often than I agree with centrists about what the problems are. If I were to tell MAGA folks the fundamental problem with America, the thing that stops us from changing everything else that's wrong with America, is that big money is allowed to be involved in politics. I think I would get a lot more agreement from the MAGA crowd than I would from the centrist crowd. The centrist crowd would say something like, "Oh, it's the internet." The internet's really what the problem is. The centrist crowd would say, "Oh, it's all this extremism I've been hearing about." They would not likely jump on board with saying that the main problem is the big money in politics. Why? Because 100% of centrist candidates are funded by massive corporations, huge super PACs. It's not to say other candidates aren't. Trump certainly had massive super PACs. A lot of politicians that you would be shocked to learn about have huge, shadowy donations behind them. But when you ask people, do you agree with the statement that a fundamental problem with America is big money involved in politics? You're going to have progressives and MAGA as the two most commonly responding yes to that. There's also the way we live our lives. When somebody is a progressive, it's either because they thought their way there or they had to be. And when somebody is MAGA, it's much the same. It's either because, yeah, you listen to a radio show that got you a certain set of opinions, but you followed them to their logical conclusion. You followed an intellectual journey. I might not have taken the same journey myself, but you're on one. And you come across people that kind of have to be there. They have to be there because why? They're poor. They're suffering. And if America doesn't change, their whole lives will be misery. And they're taking a desperate action in the form of their political stance. It's the only means by which we've been told we can have change in this country. Incidentally, that's not true. Get yourself in a union and prepare for a general strike. You can withhold your labor, but they are looking for change. They are there out of desperation, just like progressives. They're looking for safety, change, decency, a fundamental reworking of the way the country operates. Progressives and MAGA do have more in common with each other than with centrists. Why? Because we want to change many of the same things. Jake, if you're trying to get people who disagree to call in, I'm not sure you're asking the right questions or statements. I mean, you've got a point. Nobody calls in. It could also be though that I am a progressive talking to a mostly progressive audience. So I might have to. I don't want to I don't want to dishonestly yank a MAGA person in here. I've done this before. I don't want to put a question which is inflammatory down and then not fulfill the inflammatoriness of the question, you know? But if we get desperate, I'll probably just do it. Dominico, good to see you. Independent, many united. Good to see you. Good to see you both. There's more than just our political journeys. There's also our lifestyle. The average centrist is somebody who can afford not to think about politics. The average and who said centrism is dying in America? Yeah, Annie Fitzgerald, of course. I agree. And Annie, I would encourage you to study people who still possess souls but talk to MAGA frequently. Watch when Bernie Sanders interacts with MAGA. Watch people who successfully interact with MAGA because you are a likable person and your politics are good. Those two things are very rare in the United States. And we need at least one of us who is like a decent human being who doesn't repulse people immediately with their mildly creepy vibes. Uh to be able to talk to folks. So follow whoever's really good at it and get good. Jake, what do you categorize yourself as? In all seriousness, I think the categories are getting less and less useful. For a long time, I would have categorized myself as progressive. I would say that's still a good descriptor of my overall political beliefs. Once upon a time, I considered myself a libertarian, but in my heart, I suppose I'm still a libertarian, but the practicality of law, um, like writing legislation, it's somewhat nonsensical. It's a bit like, being the head of the anarchist club. Like, it just doesn't work. Libertarianism works as an ideal, but as a means of legislation, I find it not to be very useful, and I wind up being more on the progressive side of things. Oh, hey, I still lean libertarian as well. Yeah, look, we're getting killed by the likes of Sam Cedar, but he's not entirely wrong either. I mean, I think we have to acknowledge that libertarianism is more it's sort of like, when somebody says communism, they it's more of an ideal, it's more of something that's applied on a situational basis. But yeah, that's where I would say. The reason I'm hesitant about that. Oh, you agree again, alright. Yeah, the reason I'm so That's interesting, Annie. I'm a Marxist, but I call myself a democratic socialist when asked. You see, this is why I was hesitant to say, well, I'm a this or that. Because of what Annie has to do here. Like, she's saying, look, I've spent years of my life knowing what these things specifically mean here and there. But when I try to talk to somebody who, has gotten to go ahead and lead a happy life and hasn't spent years of their life reading about this, they'll have no idea what I'm talking about if I say I'm a Marxist. So I have to sum it up by saying I'm a democratic socialist. And similarly, I have to sum up what I am when I say I'm more or less a progressive. But there's so many people coming to like into the what I would call the progressive tent that it progressive is now, hold on to your butts, progressives, what liberal was 15, 20 years ago in terms of a catch-all term for broadly speaking, not hating black people. Like, I don't know, man. Like, all these terms are becoming less and less useful. But, that's because they were invented in different political times. I think the real terms that matter now are you pro or against oligarchy? That's the main thing. You could also say pro or anti-fascist. I'm of course anti-fascist. Antifa. That I consider yourself talking to the tip top number one Antifa guy right here. Because yes, I love Wolfenstein and and hate Hitler. Just can't stand the guy. I know I'm weird. I just can't stand that old Hitler. Yeah, I think you're right. I think we have much more in common than not, and the systems are set up to keep us divided. Independent men are united. Yes, yes, that is it exactly. All this stuff with like, well, do you believe uh in uh leftist, Leninist, yada yada, or this other guy, Carl Jung, and he also died 100 years ago or whatever. All of it is just so that we fight about that and not about how much of our money the bosses keep. Like, it's fucking it's amazing how we've been, like, as a society, conned into attacking our own allies. But yeah, like when I look at MAGA folks, which I am not one, and I'm sure when they look at me, like, my initial thought is not there's somebody who's in the other tribe. My initial thought is why is this guy doing an own goal on our team? And I'm to the point where like I don't have any pride left in it. Like, I don't care if it turns out that progressives were right, or if it turns out some fucking crazy how MAGA was right. I will willingly walk down whatever road we got to walk down, as long as at the end of it is a gallows and Elon Musk's fat neck. I'm sorry, I don't mean that, but paycheck for the paycheck. There's a gallows for the paychecks of billionaires. I want to make them not billionaires anymore. I want to downgrade them to being basically paupers. I want them to have no more than $999 million. Yeah, we're all tax slaves. That's it exactly. Because here's the real problem with a show about disagreeing with me. It's hard to get billionaires to come sit in and have the internet tell them what douchebags they are. Because that's the only thing I'm really passionate about these days. Basically, please don't be mean to black folks. I don't know why that has always been something we got to be reminded, but please don't do that. Cool. Don't be mean to, you know what? Let's just say don't be mean arbitrarily. Okay. And then stop stealing our money, you filthy pigs. The filthy hogs that own the companies that own your company. And the person that owns the company that owns your company actually doesn't even have any idea what your company does, what they produce, what the service is. They don't know. They certainly don't do any of the work. And yet, they get a chunk of your paycheck. Because 10 years ago, they invested cleverly or luckily. And every time they F up, they get bailed out with our tax dollars. And every time we suffer, they charge us more. These motherfuckers, I think, belong in a gulag. But I don't want to be the kind of country that sends people to the gulag. So instead, I'll settle for just not letting them get away with tax evasion anymore, with changing the tax code so that you can't say, oh, I didn't make any money. I was paid in stocks. You see? So because I was paid in stocks, that's not really income. So I don't need an income tax. You know? Trump paid, what was it, $148? $148. The nutsack. I'm not even mad specifically at Trump. I'm mad at all of them. Literally. Everybody who has more than $1 billion can suck every inch of my, because I hate them. Because they didn't work for it. I would believe if you got 50 million, if you got 100 million, I could believe conceivably that you worked for it. But 1,000,000 seconds is 11 days, and 1,000,000,000 seconds is 37 years. Nobody has legitimately earned $1 billion. They just haven't. Only person I say I have argued that in history might have deserved $1 billion paycheck is Salk, the guy that was a heroic scientist and tested medicine on himself and saved a town. What was it? What did he test? Was it penicillin? Jonas Salk. First, never mind. Polio vaccine. Jonas Salk. He deserves $1 million. But other than that, people of color, LGBTQIA+, and disabled people are directly under attack from this regime, as well as immigrants and seniors and other minorities because of the oligarchy. Yeah, and here's the thing. They also, all those groups you mentioned, they're either under attack from one group or they're simply left alone by another group. But neither of these groups helps anybody, because that might cut into capitalist profit. Term limits. Now, this is interesting. Term limits and not allowing insider trading would be a great place to start. Yes, it would be a good place to start. Setting a limit for funding from lobbyists, too. I love it. I love it, love it, love it. So, yeah, I mean, we have term limits, but we could increase those. So I see what you're saying in the House and Senate. All right. Yeah. Term limits in the House and Senate, 100%. And then not allowing insider trading, yes. That should I mean, it shocks me that we ever did allow it. The example I would give is if you are in negotiations and you with the other side, whatever the other side is, and you come to see, okay, next week my state, let's say your state level representative, next week my state is definitely going to approve a massive road funding bill, and there's really only 3 companies that we're considering buying $50 million worth of cement from, and using to do the road work. That's gonna be a massive boost to this company. They are publicly traded. Since there's only 3 companies, I'll put my thumb on the scale for this one, and I'll invest heavily right now in this company with its shares where it is right now before people know they're gonna get a $50 million contract. So you dump what? Uh, thousands of dollars into stock, and then the company gets this contract, and their stock price doubles, triples, and continues to creep up. And oh, by the way, I don't have to get taxed on that money because it's stock. It's not real assets. We shouldn't allow that. It's crazy that we ever allowed that. It's real easy to fix, too. You cannot trade stocks in office. Nobody in your family can trade stocks in office. True. I mean, you might have issues with rights there, but let's just start with the people in office. It's illegal to do insider trading, and that includes inside your own brain. If you're going to take a paycheck from the people, you cannot bet against the people on the stock market. It's as simple as that. Eliminate all funding from lobbyists. We need money out of politics entirely. Yeah, I mean, Independent's point, I think, stands. He said he was talking about I'm saying they were talking about a good place to start. I think that's a great place to start. Banning congressional stock trading. Also, it's going to make everything else easier at that point because you're going to have you're going to have politicians who are automatically less corrupt. A bunch of the people that were only going to get into it in the first place uh, simply won't become politicians. They'll say, "Oh, it's not fun now." As a candidate, says Annie Fitzgerald, I have committed to never taking lobbyists or corporate money, period. Grassroots donations only. In the campaign this year, I'm not taking any donations at all. I refuse to let you stand by that. Oh, see you around, Independent. Thank you for stopping by. Yeah, I agree with that, Annie. Make lobbyists actually have to work for support. Absolutely. Some centrist must surely be watching. Some centrists must say, no, no, no. I'm center, but I'm center left. No, no, no. I'm center, but I'm center right. I don't have more in common with blah, blah, blah than you guys have with each other. Yeah, I want to talk to that person. Come on now. Come on. Progressives and MAGA do have more in common with each other than with centrists. My reasoning is they are largely, oh, Jake, it's because I'm running for a nonpartisan unpaid position. Well, all right, fair enough. You had me worried. Progressives and MAGA have more in common with each other than with centrists because both progressives and MAGA are highly motivated to achieve political change in the United States, to achieve fundamental change to the way the United States works. And centrists are interested only in stagnation. They are part of a class which can survive in the current economy, and either they believe that things are necessary to work this way in order for them to survive the way they have. They'd be wrong, but they think that's the case. Or they think, I don't know if changing the way this country works will harm me. And I'm willing to let all these other people who say they're suffering, I'm willing to let all these other people continue to suffer as they have to avoid the risk that my comfortable way of life might be affected. They're made of different stuff, centrists. And hey, I come from that position. It's a position of comfortable ignorance. And the cruel person in me would suggest that MAGA comes from uncomfortable ignorance, and MAGA folks would suggest that I come from uncomfortable ignorance. We think that of each other, but what we don't disagree on is the fact that the centrists largely are comfortable people. They're people who can afford not to question the way things work. And there's a reason that they are a shrinking group, and the political divide in America is growing because either MAGA or progressives are right. Maybe they're both slightly wrong. But who's definitely wrong are the people who have been in charge for the last 40 years, and that's the centrists. And we got to this toxic centrism by way of Ronald Reagan and Bill Clinton. Ronald Reagan was hugely popular, and he was a hyper-capitalist. He got popular essentially selling the assets of the country to the ultra-rich, selling your rights. Some of the assets were literally your rights as human beings. Those were sold to the ultra-rich. And then Bill Clinton, who has no soul, played the saxophone somehow and got into office, and he was only interested, this Arkansas governor, he was only interested in being popular. And there wasn't the sugar crash in the economy yet. So he just kept it going. And that's how we got NAFTA. And that's how we got this talk of a uniparty and all this. Barack Obama on the world stage would be considered a maybe not very far right, but a firmly right-wing figure. But he was not seen as that in America. This uniparty thing comes from the toxic centrist outlook. The idea that simply not arguing, simply not disagreeing, it's a very suburban way of looking at things, simply not disagreeing is preferable to a disagreement that solves a problem. And you can afford to think and operate that way if you're already comfortable, if you're already in a spot where you're not suffering. Then it's just a matter of what do you vaguely nod your head at? Do you vaguely nod your head at business or human rights? But, it's all basically the same. Ooh, it is spicy. Got a little ground mustard in there. Got a little black pepper. It doesn't seem like that would be all that spicy, but it actually is. I'm sorry. I was thinking about sauce. I've been making. I'm calling it Detroit sauce. Well, I've been calling it Detroit rice, so I assume that's made with Detroit sauce. It's jelly and soy sauce, and some other things. Progressives and MAGA have more in common with each other than with centrists because the main voting base of progressives and MAGA are interested in large changes to the U.S. government. We disagree about which changes. Weirdly, we don't seem to disagree on the broad problems. For example, being over-militarized, hemorrhaging money into our military. That doesn't go to the soldiers. It goes to new equipment that we don't use and, in fact, just sell to other countries. We're fucking pimps for murder tools. It's disgusting. We largely seem to agree that we should not be pouring all of our money into political campaigns. That billionaires shouldn't be able to buy politicians, and they do. We largely agree that the nonsense language that centrist politicians use, the wishy-washy words, the tricky phrases that sound like they mean one thing but actually mean something very different. There shall be no more tolerance for that. Culturally, we're closer to each other than with centrists. In terms of our priorities, we're closer to each other than with centrists. With our ability to be accidentally racist, we're closer to each other than with centrists. It'll sneak up on you when you're not expecting it. I live in Dearborn, which has a lot of brown folks in it, and I noticed something when I was walking by this. There's a school that looks like it's like Hogwarts, basically, in this town. And I was walking by it one day, and there was kids fighting, like, so not like a real fight, but it looked like one, and they were genuinely angry with each other. And I an adult has to say, "All right, that's enough of that." But I did ask, why were these kids fighting? And there was some racial tension between I think it was like the Iraqi kids and like the Afghani kids or the kids from Lebanon or some such. I remember just thinking like, "Oh," like one of the kids turned to me and was like, "Well, they're from Lebanon or whatever." A as though I'd be like, "Oh, fricking Lebanese." Like, just remember thinking like, "You have underestimated." You turned to me looking for a friend in racism, but you've underestimated how tremendously racist I really can be, because I don't know the difference between what you're talking about. To me, this is just it's to me, it's so racist. It's so ignorant of everybody's background that it's accidentally unracist. It's to me, you're just a bunch of kids scrapping around. What the do I know about Lebanon or Iraq for that matter, or any of it? Iraq. Sorry. See, but a centrist would be so concerned with appearances, so concerned with not accidentally saying a rude thing, never mind a mean thing, that they wouldn't have understood the humor in that moment. They wouldn't have been able to appreciate that. So progressives and MAGA, culturally, in terms of our priorities, in terms of everything, have so much in common. When I think about those two kids scrapping, it reminds me that, oh, these countries are kind of near each other, and they have beef with each other because of their proximity. You don't argue about your lawn with somebody that's not your neighbor, you know? And when I see progressives and MAGA at each other's throats, I think about those kids scrapping with each other, and I think about the rich people who must be looking at us saying, "Oh, you don't get it. That guy's MAGA. Oh, you don't get it. That guy's one of those progressives, you know?" As though they're going to sympathize with us and be like, "Oh, well, then you were in the right. Oh, I didn't realize. Well, you were correct then." No, they're gonna say, "I don't give a shit. I don't see a difference between you. You're all just poor." That's what they think. Who the progressive, MAGA, okay. Yeah, in other words, poor people. Keep fighting, that's good for me. That's what a progressive thinks. I think about the managerial class, the assistant managers, the people who you're allowed to yell at, the punching bags for major corporations. We are each other's designated opponents. And I'm saying in this pit fight, we do like a classic 90s TV trope. And instead of tearing each other to bits, we say, we're the only gladiators here, motherfucker, and turn around and tear them to bits, tear them to little shreds politically in the ballot box. Because even though we don't get along, we've been trained not to get along, we have interests aligned. Really and truly, we do. And we can get to fucking each other over. We absolutely can if you so choose. But first, let's the oligarchy to death. Let's to death. Let's make them watch as we plow their businesses metaphorically. I feel like that was a solid bit. Hey, if you're enjoying the show, do consider supporting me on Patreon. It's the way I prefer to fund this endeavor. That and a potential sauce-based situation, and selling boxes. It's all empty calories. But the point is, for now, for this show to continue surviving, I do need people to support me on Patreon. The goal is to get 300 Patreon subscribers. I am a proud Patree of 2. I have 2 subscribers. Thank you, Pink. Thank you, Wicked Foxy Dragon. You guys are real ones, and I appreciate it. Please do consider using... well, I guess not anything I put in the description. I should change that. Please do consider going to patreon.com/WYCD to support the show. It's just $5 a month. For the equivalent of a cup of coffee, you can keep a semi-functional alcoholic rambling into a microphone. This is Jake versus the Internet. Coming up, colonizing space. We are back and badder than ever, my friends. How you doing out there in the wicked universe? We are discussing things that I hope you'll disagree with. I hope you'll disagree. So far, no takers, but wait a minute. Perhaps a change. What do I see here but a gentleman by the name of Dirk? Dirk, thank you so much for joining us. Let me set this up and welcome you to the stage. How you doing, my friend?
Hey, I'm doing well. How you doing? I
I'm
presume
doing
you're
great.
Jake.
Is there a particular prompt we've talked about so far that you disagree with?
Well, I'm not gonna lie. I just saw this pop up on my feed. I see. Do you disagree? Uh,
Hmm,
Looking at your channel, it looks like you're a lefty.
I am.
Here, I disagree plenty with you.
Well, great. That's perfect. I'll run you through the prompts we've had so far. You can take your pick. I'll say them all. So first is Christians are victims of right-wing politicians, not perpetrators of things we disagree with, but the class of victims. Progressives and MAGA have more in common with each other than with centrists. Oh, and that's the only two we've gone through so far. If you'd like to take either of those, you can. The other one I was going to talk about, which I invite you to talk about, I think colonizing space should be a priority. Those are our three topics. Is there any in particular you like?
So what does that third one mean? Colonizing space should be a priority. What's that mean?
So I think that humanity in general and America as one of the most industrious countries to ever exist should make colonizing space a top priority for our nation to accomplish, as in the sort of thing we track every year. We in the cultural zeitgeist, we keep track of its progress. We have expectations of our government to make progress. We should have colonies on the moon and a regular U.S. populated space station. And the reason for all of this is manyfold. Top three off the top of my head. Number one, sincerely, a backup plan in case of a worldwide catastrophe. Unlikely, but we've seen in the fossil record, boy, it's happened before, and it got beasts much bigger than us. And the more practical and the more immediate, I would say, advances in technology come out of arbitrary tasks much of the time. And there is almost nothing more arbitrary than setting up a habitat in an inhospitable environment. When we do this, we get things like Velcro that was invented for space, lubricant, also like KY jelly was invented for space travel. It's a training ground for our brightest minds. We got super soakers from a NASA scientist who just applied that stuff. So I think that colonizing space is worth pouring money into, frankly.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I agree with you there. Um,
Well, heck yeah. Let's see if we can go back and find some disagreement
yeah, I
because
mean, I think maybe the fact that you said progressives and people to the right have more in agreement than centrists, I think I'd probably disagree with you most there.
fantastic. I'll give you the abridged version of my pitch.
Sure.
I think the reason that they have more in common with centrists is that centrists are pretending to have political beliefs, and they don't actually. I think centrists' main political belief, if any, is that the nation should not change very much. Whereas progressives and MAGA are both groups who, while they might disagree on the specific changes, seem to agree that fundamental change is necessary to the way the country operates, that it has not been operating as it should over the last, say, 40 years. And a lot of the things we disagree, we seem to agree on in terms of larger topics are shocking. Like I agree more with MAGA about things, more often with MAGA about things than I do with centrist Democrats. For example, getting big money out of politics, not having an overinflated military that invades countries arbitrarily, things of that nature.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I think we may be talking to different centrists.
Mm,
From my experience, a centrist is basically someone who already is MAGA, except they're pro-choice and they like universal health care. That tends to be
really?
kind of a very broad net over who I talk to, people who consider themselves centrists. But
Now, see,
mhm.
what you're saying is fascinating to me because I encounter more MAGA folks that are behind the idea of universal health care than I do centrist folks. Well, no, it's not true. Center left will claim to be a fan of universal health care, but none of the candidates they support are actually for universal health care. So I suppose it does come down to who are we talking about? Are we talking about the politicians or are we talking about the voters? And I'm talking about the voters. So the desire to have universal health care. I don't know that. Well, let's start with this. Are you against the idea of universal health care yourself?
No, I mean, I think in an ideal world, we do have universal health care. I do think the MAGA folks like myself are more so just concerned about the financial burden that puts on the country, being that the existing Medicaid, Medicare programs that we have right now are already costing us, hundreds of billions of dollars or whatever the actual number is. So like 60% of our expenditures go to that. So I think people, at least on my side of the aisle, want to maybe pull the brakes back a little bit on that idea. And we want to maybe bring some more money into the country, eliminate waste in the government before we start adding even more entitlements.
Hmm. Would you say that being a centrist means that they take small steps in the name of compromise, small steps towards the things that they believe we need?
Um, I don't necessarily know if that's a major attribute of someone who considers himself a centrist. I mean, look, I mean, we may just be talking to different people, and I mean, I think that's probably definitely the case. But
Sure.
when I hear someone say they're a centrist, they're not necessarily talking about the speed in which we make changes. It's more so about the changes themselves that they support, if that makes sense.
Mm. Yeah, so it's if you were to take all of their political opinions and throw them on a chart, some would be over here, some would be over there. Fair enough. Uh, I would say that when it comes to a centrist in terms of how they vote, so the people they vote for rather than their aspirations. What you have is politicians, purple state types who are not committing to any major policy that will shake things up. They're the sort of people who, when it comes time to vote, will either sell their vote at a very high price to whichever lobby or deal is available, or they will wait until the thing is going to be done, with or without their help, and then say, I'm for it. But I don't see anybody. I've not heard of a centrist who says, I have a groundbreaking policy that's going to fix things for you. The closest I can name to that would be Barack Obama, who I would describe as center right. Others might say center left. Definitely centrist. He proposes the Affordable Care Act, which is really just Romney Care. It was really Mitt Romney's invention, but rebranded as Barack Obama's. And even that was such a half measure towards the idea of government subsidized healthcare that it wound up basically being a shadow of what it could have.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it sounds like you're talking a lot about the politicians themselves, which is fair. I think a lot of politicians in general are afraid to pitch these big, uh, you know, big defining policy prescriptions, just because the bigger the prescription that you push, the larger the chance you have of people disagreeing with you and uh, not voting for you. So I think what you're describing is more of a politician tactic of taking things slow, because that tends to get a larger share of the vote if you do it that way.
I mean, yeah, but then the if you're deciding who is a centrist and who is not, I would say, as far as a useful definition for the course of this conversation, the people who vote for centrist candidates, the people who wind up supporting them. In terms of
Well,
in terms of I might say this. I'm more likely to agree with somebody that watches a lot of who do you consider to be a far right streamer?
I don't
Uh,
necessarily watch streamers, but
Fair enough. You know what? I'm more likely to agree with somebody that watches a lot of Fox News than I am, no, not Newsmax, than I am to agree with somebody that watches a lot of CNN. And the reason why is because in the extremes of opinions, there is more of a call for change generally, and there's more of agreement on what is wrong. Because if you agree on what's wrong, then you have to start having a conversation about how to address it. And where we argue, where MAGA and progressives seem to be at each other's throats, is when we're disagreeing about what to do about a problem that we agree exists. Whereas with a centrist, I just see somebody who's comfortable enough to play the edges. I see somebody when they're supporting a politician who's not coming out with a big, bold plan because they don't want to have to stand up for that in a general election. I see somebody who's comfortable enough to not take these problems very seriously. And I just can't relate to that. on any sort of way. You're either your eyes are open or you're not living in the country or you're just so shielded from consequences that all of this is hypothetical to you. But with MAGA people, I get the sense they're living in the real world. So are progressives. And we might be disagreeing about what the cause of our problems are, but we certainly don't disagree that the problems exist. Case in point, big money in politics, people not able to afford health care. Earlier, you and I were talking about the difficulties of implementing a solution, but what we weren't disagreeing about is the problem, that it exists. And I find that is an entry level conversation that is even necessary to have with somebody who just happily and lazily votes centrist. That's my only thought.
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely get what you're saying. I do think though we're maybe focusing on issues that were not necessarily top issues in the at least the 2024 election. And I
Mm.
think those top issues are the ones that really showcase the large differences between MAGA Republicans and progressives. So for
Ooh, give me some
example,
examples. Yeah.
yeah, so for example, in the 2024 election, uh, the biggest um, thing that people cared about, the top of most people's list was border security. And if
Mm.
you talk to a progressive, even the administration, the Biden administration, at least for uh, years, prior to the election itself, which is when they started changing their tune. But they were saying, "Oh, the border is a non-issue. The border is not open, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera." Um, so the impression that MAGA conservatives got was progressives don't actually care about border security. Progressives want an open border. Progressives are actively kind of sabotaging our immigration system in order, to get what they're after.
You
Um,
know what's fascinating is that progressives think the exact same thing about MAGA. Like you could, if you would just switched MAGA and progressives, and you said that, and I said that at the beginning of the show, nobody would have batted an eye because of how similar we think about each other. One thing I'll get back to the entirety of what you said in a moment. One thing I want to focus in on though, why does what Joe Biden did inform your idea of what a progressive believes? Do you think of Joe Biden or Kamala Harris as progressives?
well, no, not necessarily Joe Biden himself, but
Mm.
progressives um, were the people I was talking to during the whole election season,
Mm.
and they were
Yeah.
defending the actions, saying that there was no border crisis. Right? They essentially just denied that there was any sort of issue at the border, um, which led me to believe that they actually want an open border, and some of them actually admit that. But most of
Yeah.
them don't because they realize how politically uh, horrible that is for them. But
And
yeah, I
we've
mean,
got our libertarians here as well. There
yeah, I
we
mean,
do have the folks who are like, "Oh, there should be no such thing as borders, and also all drugs
sure,
should be legal." And yeah, I'm
sure,
sure. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I mean, that goes to show. I mean, look at the Libertarian Party; they're in shambles. I mean, they got what 1% of the vote. They're pretty much irrelevant in our in our political discourse. But yeah, I mean that's just one example. Like when I speak and debate with progressives, they completely disregard the issues at the border, and they were totally fine with the way that the administration was handling it. So I mean that's like a very large dividing issue that I saw between MAGA and progressives. That centrists
Mm.
were completely on the MAGA side, where they were like, okay, like I think the border issue is a complete mess, and I think Trump would do a great job of fixing it. But and then XYZ, there's a couple of other issues that they just disagree with MAGA on.
So, I actually think progressives and MAGA are closer on this issue as well than the centrists, although I acknowledge progressives have done a miserable job of explaining themselves. If you were to ask a non-fired up progressive, about what specifically is happening at the border that is a problem. What they would say is we do not have enough judges to process the people that are coming in. When people come in and they request asylum, you need a judge to look at what they said and determine whether or not it's true, blah, blah, blah. We simply don't have enough judges. And the fact that, in a progressive's opinion, Republicans have, Republicans and centrist Democrats actually have continually hired less and less judges every administration, allowing the problem to get worse and worse. So there's a buildup, like a massive countrywide DMV at our border. There's a huge buildup. And that results in the secondary problems that we wind up having. Oh, this guy missed his appointment to get to the thing. See, he snuck into our country. No, his appointment was 8 months from the day he came in. Since then, he's got a job because we required him to get a job in order to stay here, yada, yada, yada. And he forgot because he's a human being. That's the sort of thing that a progressive would say is wrong with the border. Not that we allow people in the first place, but that we don't have the means in place, the funding for that matter, to deal with the people that are coming in. What a centrist would do about these things is not address the fundamental problem that either group is saying. So MAGA might be saying we're letting in too many people. And progressives might be saying we're not processing the people we let in fast enough. And you know what? Either could be true or neither could be true, but centrists don't address either problem. They only address the performative looking solutions to those problems. So we'll make a big show of increasing ICE funding or border funding to patrol and to punish people that are going to try to get around this terrible system we've put in place. But what we're not going to do is make a rule saying that we're going to allow less people in, because that would annoy the lefties. And what we're not going to do is hire a bunch of more immigration judges, because that would annoy a lot of people on the right, or at least so they believe. And what we wind up with is just this treading water, but we're in a sewer. There is my take on that. But I find your comments illuminating and also depressing, because you're right. We did a terrible job of explaining ourselves.
Yeah, and I mean, I could give like two even more specific examples related to the border that I found centrists completely disagree with progressives on and agree more with MAGA on. So one of them was the implementation of the CBP One app. The Biden administration essentially made this app where it made it like a 3-step process just to get through the border and to get your asylum hearing and all that stuff. It made it a very lax process, to say the least, in order to come across the border and start your process. I think while while some people may like the idea of having an easier application process, they saw that it just caused chaos at the border. And I've spoken to many centrists who said they didn't like that. They wanted some other implementation strategy to do this. They were very for Remain in Mexico, which Joe Biden eliminated within his first week in office. And progressives, on the other hand, defended this app. They defended the removal of Remain in Mexico. They seem to be totally fine, actually, with a lot of the stuff that the Biden administration was doing to escalate the situation at the border.
Out of curiosity, do you think Biden or Trump deported more people in their first terms?
Well, I know the answer. I know it's Biden, but I think those are fudged numbers somehow. I mean, I just
Why
looking at.
somehow? That's
Well, I
that's
mean, yeah, I mean,
interesting to me.
just look at the way that they're fighting the current Trump administration tooth and nail with his deportations. Like, I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
like,
Well, those are fundamentally different. I mean, they're literally just pulling people off the streets that look like they might be from somewhere else. I don't mean I'm not trying to
Well, I mean that's
argue
an
that's
accusation.
different.
I
I'm just
mean,
saying it's a
there's no
different standard.
evidence to support that any citizens have been deported or anything like that. So the Trump administration, I mean, they're obviously increasing the funding in ICE. ICE has a much larger presence in our country now, which is actually one of the reasons that Trump won in the first place. This was wanted by the American people, um, and yeah, I mean, just looking at the way that Democrats are dealing with this situation and actively resisting deportations and resisting the enforcement of our immigration laws and actively even rioting in many cases. If you look at LA and if you look at some of these other cities, where it's
Well,
hard to believe that Joe Biden was able to deport more people and they just wouldn't make as big of a fuss about this.
well,
It's either
I
that
specifically
or they just are political hacks and only care. Uh, if Joe Biden did more deportations, why would they not be up in arms about the deportations that the Trump
well,
administration is doing?
progressives were. Democrats weren't because it's not a centrist issue to really care about immigration one way or the other. But and if it is, it's only when they get scared by news headlines. I do want to, but progressives were furious with Joe Biden for that. I do want to do a quick correction. There were at least 3 U.S. citizens deported. There was 3 children.
Oh,
A 4-year-old
I
boy
know
was
what you're
stage 4
talking. Yeah.
kidney cancer. Yeah, okay.
Well, but come
That's
on. I
happened,
mean,
but
like, but let's be real though. Like, if I mean, do you know the circumstances of those? Like, do you know why they were
I know they were
deported?
citizens. But
Yeah, but
the
you know
my
their
my
children
point
and
is,
their parents were illegal and they were deported, right?
well, it de
So if they were
I
not
I
deported,
don't
the
I
narrative
wouldn't
would
wanna
be that we're
concede.
holding them hostage away from their parents.
Well,
It's a
the
lose-lose situation in the eyes of progressives.
maybe, but my point is more that we're talking about the first administrations. So Trump versus
Sure.
Biden in their first administrations. Look, there might be a conspiracy to put up different numbers, but regardless, the numbers that progressives were looking at throughout his administration were, I only knew to look that up because we complained about it so much on this side of things.
Well, I
I
mean, sorry, real quick though, like
Sure.
it's also so you're comparing uh, deportations to deportations, which is fair, apples to apples. But if you look at kind of the overall context of the situation, the Trump administration or whatever his first administration did a much better job at deterring people from entering the country illegally in the first place. Remain in Mexico, all of these other policies that he put on the border to attempt to seal it up as best as he could. He's doing a much
Yeah.
better job in this administration of actually sealing it up with zero border or near zero border crossings month after month. But yeah, I mean the influx of immigrants coming in under the Trump administration versus the Biden administration is just wildly different. So you are right, assuming those numbers are correct, the deportation numbers, but the influx of immigrants is just on a different volume. Where
Well,
if millions and millions of more immigrants are coming in under Joe Biden, it's easy to say that he deported more of them just because there was so many more here in this country.
I'm not sure that that's true. But regardless, my point is to say if you look at Joe Biden, a centrist, he is way more invested in the dealing with the problem than with the preventing the problem. And when you talk, let's see, who said deporter in chief for Obama? This is a common through line with progressive complaints against their government. And well, you and I are going to disagree about what the main problem is it people coming in or getting processed, and we might not even disagree about that. But the centrists, by which I mean the Joe Bidens of this world and the Jeb Bushes and the what have you, they have just no interest in addressing the core problem. What we're comparing here is Trump, which is the essentially the MAGA head guy, who does have an interest in addressing the core problem, or has at least advertised that as an interest. I would argue that this time around, he's doing it actually less than he was before, but we're comparing it against a centrist who only does these things performatively and leaves you with an impression of my beliefs that's totally wrong and crucially will never make anyone happy. I would rather deal with another Trump next time around in terms of rhetoric than I would another Biden, no matter what side he's running on. Simply because whether or not I agree with Trump, I have a sense of what his intentions are. And when it comes to a centrist politician, I don't have a sense of what their intentions are because I don't think they have any beyond getting in office.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, if you so you would consider yourself a progressive, is that right?
Yeah, I'm left of Bernie on when you take the little tests.
That yeah, I
I
mean,
don't know how
it's
useful that is
very
anymore, but
very interesting. I've spoken to people who call themselves progressives, and you do not sound like them. I mean, I'm not saying that as a jab against you. Actually, I think you sound very very rational, which is awesome. But my disagreement with your prompt is after speaking to people that don't sound like you who still call themselves progressive. So, I mean that's kind of where I'm at. I mean, you sound actually pretty reasonable and normal. A lot of progressives tend, at least the ones I've spoken to, defended the Biden administration tooth and nail. Kind of wanted him to go farther and just completely open the border even more. And they say borders are arbitrary and our country is welcome to everybody and anybody can come in and we shouldn't be putting restrictions. People just coming for a better opportunity. Blah blah blah. And it sounds like you're saying, let's take a step back and do these approaches to make people get processed quicker, which is not
just
really
bigger
something I've
government.
heard
Hire
from progressives.
hire more employees. Yeah. I mean, you're look, Dirk, I invite you to come back. This has been a lovely conversation, and I feel the same way. What you've described about progressives, I feel about you. You seem like a rational human being. We never seem to find each other. We only get the crazies from our side, whatever those sides are. So thank you for stopping by. I hope you will again.
Absolutely, will do. Appreciate you bringing me up.
Have a
I'll
good
keep
one, man.
watching. By the way, I'll subscribe. Keep it
Awesome.
up, man.
Thank you so much. That was Dirk representing the first person who is able to come up here and disagree on camera. I appreciate it. Thank you, Dirk. That was very useful. Got a correction from Annie Fitzgerald. She says there was more U.S. citizens deported. I believe it, but it wasn't really the thing we were talking about. And I do not want to assert the number that we think is correct because that would make it seem like that's what we were talking about. And it wasn't. We were just it's the things that happen when you're talking about politics. It's all very complicated and it gives me a headache. And a minor erection, but that's simply because I like being tedious. We have another topic though that we're going to jump into. And I'm going to do another music break because later when I delude myself into thinking I'm going to clip this, what I like to do is divide these things up. Also, I drank soda pop back in 2 shakes of a lamb's tail. This is El Funk by Tammuz. I didn't put up the thing, did I? Well, it'll still serve the same purpose. Uh, no music and now titles. Oh God! And I didn't lose a fucking viewer. How is that possible? Yeah, I didn't switch the scene over. I'm sorry. Yeah, I got to listen to a great little ditty. Uh, let's go ahead and put up some graphics and try to pretend like that f up didn't happen. I think we ought to colonize space. And if you disagree, I invite you to call in and tell me why. The show is Jake versus the internet, and I the show is Frozen. Oh, well, I'm still, transmitting as far as I see, so let's just keep it going. I'm Jake, and this is why I think we should tolerate, space, not tolerate, colonize space. It is a way for us to advance as a species. We have had some of our best, most useful inventions come about because we threw our minds at an impossible problem. Nothing lives in the vacuum of space except for what we decide. Yeah, motherfuckers. We are a species that swam out of the muck, crawled up into trees, learned, crawled out of the trees, conquered the planet. We have no gills, but we can live underwater for months at a time on a submarine. We have no wings, but we are the fastest flying animal on the planet. We require 14 pounds of pressure to be pushing at us at all times in the form of an atmosphere, and yet we walked on the mother moon, ladies and gentlemen. Space should be our greatest point of pride as a species. And also, you don't get to be an ape that conquered mammoths, motherfucker. You don't get to be an ape that defeated the saber-toothed cat that is tougher, more dangerous to come across than a lion. You don't get to be that without having a desire to overcome challenges. And when we are left with no challenges to overcome, no mountains that we haven't already climbed, no beast we haven't slain, what do? We slay each other. We attack each other. Our minds rot when they are sedentary. We turn ourselves to destructive habits. We chew our own lips as a species when we do not have something to conquer. Space is basically a giant playground. As far as we can tell, it's just rocks up there. As far as we know, and we have fucking looked really hard, there's no microorganisms. There's no algae. There's no nothing that we didn't bring there, which means it's the first time ever in the history of man that we can go colonize somewhere, which we fucking love to do. We can go colonize somewhere and not feel even a little bit bad about it. There's no native peoples whose land we're taking. It's empty. Nothing can live there. It's like setting up an apartment in Chernobyl. Free real estate. Now, I understand people whose instinct will be to say, we have problems on Earth. So why not solve the problems on Earth before we're thinking about space? And to that, I say, number one, we can do both. And number two, there will always be problems where we are. The moment we colonize space, we will disagree about what color the siding on the abdome should be, and we will have problems in space. There will always be problems. Here's a problem that's coming up. There's too much of us. There's too many of us. You can feel it. You can feel it as you're driving around. If you got a couple of decades under your belt, it is harder to find spaces where people are not. But you know what? We're confined right now. We're a species of which there's probably only supposed to be a couple of million on the earth at any time, and we're eyeballing 10 billion soon. So we're eventually going to need literal space for people to occupy. Now I realize everybody on earth, all 10 billion of us, could fit in Texas right now if we really wanted to, but that's not the point. The point is you should be able to stretch your legs, you should be able to go places. Also, when we have spare resources, we tend to use them to fight wars right now. It would be great if we had a different sort of competition. We accidentally discovered science as a sport when we were enemies with the Soviet Union and the United States. The space race was a very healthy form of competition. I don't like that some cosmonauts burnt up. I don't like that you know we allowed the racing to become a priority in some cases over safety. But it's much better than war. We should be insisting that science become an ambition of ours again and it take the exciting form of exploration. I think we all know this is where we're headed. I don't think there's any question in this space, in this, sorry, awkward use of this space. I don't think there's any question that in our society, we will eventually be occupants of space. If you write a story about the future, and it's a story about anything that's 200 years from now, you will be expected to explain what kind of space travel there is, because it's just assumed that there will be space travel. Will it be the very realistic kind where it's only within our solar system and journeys take a couple of weeks and yada yada yada? Or will you go full Star Wars with your ships and you're spacing around making noise in the vacuum? You know, you're expected to write about that kind of stuff because it's just assumed that's where we're going. So let's get to it. Why Israel? Are you bothering trying to get a strip of land to occupy? Why? Go up, not out. Why Russia? Are you invading another country trying to steal their land? Why? What's going to change if we redraw the lines again and again and again? Effing nothing. But boy, if we can grow produce in a station that orbits the Earth and is able to get sunlight 24 hours a day, then, and also block a portion of the sunlight coming into Earth, therefore cooling us slightly, yeah, that would be useful. I agree, except the priority part, says Nachikit. Uh, same as frame. Here's why I think it should be a priority. If it's just a vague notion that we ought to do this thing, but it's not something we insist politicians talk about, it will consistently take a back seat in our attention. And I think the very fact, let me pop that up. And I think the very fact uh, that it would have our attention would be a huge benefit to it. I want to hear people responding to threats of war with how is that going to affect our exploration budget? I want to hear people saying, look, we've just discovered that these AI supercenters are using up a lot of the carbon that we require for exploration, a lot of the carbon budget that we have for this, that, or the other thing. I want to see this stuff framed as because we are not doing well enough on Earth, it is affecting our priorities in leaving the Earth and seeing what's out there. I think as a I think it is very likely that in my lifetime, civilian space travel, at least not while I'm young enough to properly enjoy it, civilian space travel is not going to be a thing. And I think that's a shame because it could have been. And because there is a lot of potential benefits. Well, I think it's a shame because it could have been, but I also think that there is a lot of potential benefits that I will enjoy from having space travel as a priority that we would not get if it wasn't a priority. That's benefits I would enjoy here on Earth. But let's find some folks that disagree with me. I am now joined in the studio by Heavy D. I suspect I know who this gentleman is. Don James, how you doing?
What's
Hey, buddy. Do
What's
you
up, man?
think that colonizing space should be a priority?
No, I don't think it should be a priority because our priority should be right here on Earth. You know where we are. That should be first priority, then space travel. So right there, I don't think it should be. I don't think it should be top priority. Put it that way.
I agree on the top part. No argument there. But I do think it should be a priority. I think it should be listed amongst our the things we say we care about on both parties, whatever the parties are in power, because making it a priority frames everything else that we're discussing. It frames discussions of how many homeless do we have, how many yada yada yada. How's our education system? How are these children of today going to help with space exploration tomorrow? It gives us an opportunity to put all of our arguments in perspective of there is a greater goal for humanity, for America, for all of us. Those are my thoughts on that. Where do you see it potentially interfering if it were a top priority?
Well, I mean, priority for who though? It would be probably top priority for the billionaires. I can see that.
Interesting.
It would be their top priority, and that's where I think it wouldn't mesh because their top priority would basically override our priorities. You know.
I mean,
So
true. But that's true of almost any issue. Billionaires' top priority in our healthcare overrides our priority. In what transportation we get overrides our priority. If you live in California or Detroit, in basically anything, their priorities are winning out. You're not wrong. It's an opportunity for them to suck more money out of the government. But anything the government does, as long as we are under their thumb, is an opportunity for them to suck more money out of the government.
yeah, and so that's my argument. I don't think it should be a priority. You should have maybe took your premise and put top priority in the premise. You know.
Ooh, I like that. It's more bold
And it would
too.
have been it would have been more where that priority lies. If you would have said colonizing space should be a top priority, see what I mean? Then
Yeah.
nobody would agree with that. But since you're just saying it's a priority, then yeah, it's probably a priority, but it's like way down on the list.
Fair enough. All right, I'm going to upgrade myself to top priority, if only to play devil's advocate, and because Annie Fitzgerald's coming up, and I want to make it easy for her to disagree with me.
Okay.
Thanks for coming on, man. I
All right.
appreciate it.
All
See
right,
you around,
Jake.
brother.
Later.
That is Donald James X, wicked house musician, and if you're not familiar with his game, you ought to be, because he does one one of the few streams I'm actually able to enjoy at any point, which is he just plays guitar. You know, he plays guitar, and he does it well, and he does it frequently, and I need that in my life. I used to have a buddy named Dane who would play guitar all the time. Now I'm getting nostalgic. Annie, help me out. Hey, buddy, how you doing?
Hi, Jake. Can you hear me okay?
I sure can. How's life?
I'm doing okay. I am doing okay. Just super busy right now.
That's my understanding. Go get him, Annie. So what's the deal here with colonizing
I mean,
space?
this is a
I think it should
ridiculous
be a
premise.
top priority. You think it's ridiculous?
Yes.
Okay, why?
So as first of all, we're destroying the planet we're on right now. What's to stop us from doing the same thing on another planet?
Fuck 'em. Fuck the other planets. I agree that we should have some scientific study. We should have some care for the preservation of scientific facts, but it is just an unpopulated chunk of rock. What do we care if the whole atmosphere becomes acid if we're in domes?
Well, I don't know. Maybe because we can't even manage or take care of people on this planet. Like, what makes you think we'll take care of people or manage another planet well?
Well, if we're
Like,
not doing it on this planet, what does it matter if we also don't do it somewhere else?
because, I don't know. Maybe we should take care of people here first.
That's I think where a lot of the disagreement comes from. And my view is simply that our desire to get there, to successfully colonize somewhere else, is going to help us take care of people here. It's yes, the inventiveness that is required winds up helping us here. For example, if you make a habitable dome structure, you could plop it and you find, okay, we made it light enough that we can transport all the materials from the Earth to the moon, and we made it cheap enough that we can do this at scale. You will also have found an easy way to build just regular housing here on Earth. There's a lot
Okay,
of
but
ways.
here's the problem with that, though. Okay, we need to get rid of billionaires first, because what's gonna happen is billionaires are gonna go up there. They're gonna build their luxury space townhomes or whatever.
Yeah.
And
Mixed
the
space
poors
mansion.
are gonna get screwed.
Yeah.
Just like what happens down here. You think the poors are gonna get to live in those domes? I don't think so.
There definitely won't get to. You're right. The way we're currently set up, they will either not be allowed or have to, and neither would be good. But I'll say this. I think you and Donald James brought this up as well. Billionaires can F up the process as they currently are, but I go back to the same thing. They can and do F up anything we try to do. So if we let them kill all of our ambitions, we simply become serfs, and that's it. If we say we're not allowed to dream without their permission,
I'm not saying that we can't dream. What I'm saying is that if we're gonna do this, if Earth is totally messed up and we've decided that Earth is no longer inhabitable, that we got to get out of here, okay, fine, but we need to take the profit motive out of it, because
that I'm
as long as
100% for.
Because if there is a profit motive to go inhabit another planet, billionaires are gonna walk right over the poors.
There's the other element of things too, and I want to address Donald James heckling here. Speculation is pure sport. Yes, I am just speculating, and I am just making stuff up. But it's not out of nothing. So when I said that bit about the habitable domes or yada yada, that's an example of the kind of thing I expect to have happen. The kinds of things that really did happen, I mentioned earlier. We really did get Velcro from space exploration. We really did get a bunch of surprises that made our lives better. We don't know specifically.
I don't know if
we can only
I don't know if super soaker guns were all that beneficial because my brother used to beat the crap out of me with one, but
misuse of science. But there's the other thing. There's the other major part to it, which is that I honestly feel that psychologically, humanity without a society, without a purpose, without something we are striving for,
you were
becomes
talking to a
lost.
psychology major, by the way.
Great. Then I think we're going to find that I get justified in a moment because I suspect this is true. A society with no goal becomes lost and becomes destructive. A society without either an enemy to fight or a place to explore or a disease that they're determined to cure becomes destructive to themselves and others. And I think space is a handy, infinite goal to have.
I mean, yeah. I mean, like what you just said is entirely correct. That's why I feel like that is I feel like that is why the right is often really good with their rhetoric and often like is able to like speak to people better than the left can sometimes because people do need that motive. They do need like inspiration. And when people are losing jobs, when people are unable to afford to go to college or get education, like, you know, people will often take that energy and put it into other spaces. So, like, I do feel like, okay, I will give you this. Like, you know, can we research this? Can we look into this? Sure. But like, I just worry that we're screwing over the poors. We're screwing over so many like people right now on our very own planet, not to mention not addressing climate change here on this planet. So what's to say, like I said before, what's to say that that same kind of thing won't happen somewhere else? And that is what I'm worried about.
So if we had, let's just say we go ahead with a major project now, and we have a major investor who's like a capitalist oligarch type, they're going to make a lot of money off our attempt to colonize space. I think if you can picture the kinds of things they would say to get people to be on their side, you can see how a change in a country's priorities also changes the power structure. Because the oligarch who was suddenly realizing, oh, I'm going to make a lot of money if I can get this government to invest in this, would start saying, well, fossil fuels are heating up this planet. Well, you guys, there's not enough room. There's people living on the streets. If they start saying stuff like that, because they're trying to get you to support this project, which you and I will never actually ever see because it'll take 100 years or whatever. It tells you can see already the roadmap that non-oligarchs, that just regular folks would go down when thinking about the reasons this might be good and how that might also affect how they behave in other ways. So if they just heard from a rich, powerful person, the planet's heating up. Wait a minute. The rich, powerful people I've been listening to have not been saying that's a priority. Suddenly that's a priority. It's the same thing that happened with Tesla. It was totally outside of the zeitgeist for Republicans to talk about, to even have an electric car. And they didn't end up, as far as I've seen, having them for the right reasons. But now you see a lot of right wingers with electric cars because it's a status symbol.
But billionaire philanthropists still do shitty things.
Yeah.
Like,
but when our priorities change, that our arguments around them change as well. And only the people that were arguing for true things hold on to the things that they were arguing about, because everybody else was just coming up with a story about why things are the way they are.
So could we do this without billionaires, though?
Yes. And I
You
think
think
if
so?
progressives are the ones that are demanding space-based policies, I think it will be done without billionaires. I also think progressives should have something they can talk about that is aspirational, because even if it's a nightmare to you, it is aspirational for, I think, perhaps misguided people to try to get all of the immigrants out of the country, for example. That's
Do you
something you
think?
can work towards. We
Do you
should be
think
pitching things in middle.
Do you think progressives don't talk about aspirational things?
I think most of the aspirational things we talk about, the right wing already has mental defenses for. They are already ready to shut off that conversation. So we should consider talking to them about things they're not ready for, because it will reveal who we actually are and what our intentions actually are. And the people who get in its way, even if if they're righteous about it, they will reveal their intentions. For example, you are against this thing. You literally are what I'm talking about. You are a person running for office who is against this thing. And in being against it, you have revealed what your intentions actually are. Your priorities are to help people. You worry that it would get in the way of that. Your priorities are to take power away from billionaires. You worry that this would give power to billionaires. I think it's useful to talk about even without actually accomplishing anything. You've been revealed to be a decent human being. Good. And I think if Trump talked about it, because of what I think about Trump, not asking everybody else to, I think it would reveal who he is. So
Yeah.
I do think a couple of big swings in terms of policy goals are long past due, and for
Yeah.
everybody.
I
Can
mean,
we
that's
address
fair.
some audience stuff together? 'Cause I
Sure.
see some comments. I'll take this one first, and I'd like your response as well. Jake, why not just directly invest in the inventions and skip the space part when we were talking about Velcro and all that stuff? Because you don't know what you need till you need it. And you sometimes don't know what will be useful until you've seen it used. We made an air filter out of a sock and some scrap when we were trying to save the Apollo 13 folks, and it worked. You invent stuff on the fly when you find sudden needs. Another thing I would point out in this regard is where we get China from, the glass China. It is called that because it comes from China, and it was invented, as far as we can tell, before clear glass was. And most people about the world found a way to get clear glass and regularly used it. But in China, that did not happen for a much longer time because they already had a useful type of glass that was getting the job done. And because they already had that one type of glass that held beverages and yada yada, they never had a need to build a kind of glass that does a different thing. In some ways, having problems that we don't even know exist yet will be a benefit to us, because it will provide us solutions that we didn't even know could be applied to things.
Well,
What do you think
and
about just directly investing in the
a
invention?
lot of inventions have also come to be by accident when, like,
True.
somebody was trying to do something else. So, you know, I mean, I get what, you know, where this person is coming from here. But I mean, I'm not entirely opposed to going to space. I'm just worried about how and who is going to get screwed in the process if we don't do it right.
Well, then before I end the show, I'll just summarize your opinion real quick. I think you'll find it fair. Annie Fitzgerald hates science. So you heard it here first. Anti-science, Annie Fitzgerald. I'm just getting you used to being a politician. You'll never be able to win. You're in hell now.
Yes, yes.
Great points, Annie. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Jake. Let's talk soon, especially about whole Washington and stuff, because there's been some big progress on that front.
My door is always open to you, my friend. You
Awesome.
you have a floating date. It's every Tuesday until you tell me quit asking.
All right. Thank you, Jake.
See you, buddy. It was Annie Fitzgerald. Came in second in her race. She was a dark horse. There's a lot of folks running, and she did shockingly well for her what do they call it? Freshman outing. I don't know. First bite at the apple. Get back in it, Annie. We're all behind you. Really great conversations from all. I do want to do a disclaimer that I don't even know if I will continue to agree with these opinions in an hour. But I'm happy to see the way we all talk about this stuff. I'm happy to see at least this crowd, the way y'all are discussing. It's been too long with all the arguing over nothingness and all the turning to our neighbors and blaming them for something both of our bosses did. That era must end, and I'm happy to close that chapter with you and close out tonight with Donald James X.